So if I was speed running my current physique, but I could only pick 10 exercises, here is my top 10. Big shout out to Paris Butler, also known as Bald Omni-Man, for the invitation to do this video. Really like the concept. He did his own video with his own top 10. I will link it in the description below. A lot of overlap with my own, but some differences as well. Also, Sam Sheether did his own video where I really like his take on this, where he described his training journey in great detail, and there were a lot of valuable insights there as well. Now, if you can only choose 10 movements, each movement has to be joint friendly, because you're going to be doing a lot of them. They have to be spammable. You have to be able to do them on a pretty regular and frequent basis, just because you're not really going to have another exercise in your back pocket to swap out like you might normally do in a training plan. And also, ideally, you're going to want to be working your entire body, which means that compound movements are going to take priority. Finally, they have to be progressible. If you choose some kind of hypothetically awesome machine chest press that feels really good, but after 3 years of training, you've already maxed it out for 20 reps, well, it suddenly goes from really good to kind of shit. Another example, push-ups. Fantastic for beginners, but once you can do 30, 40, 50, 60, 80, 100 push-ups in a row, you either need other exercises or at least variations in order for it to be effective. Alright, starting off at number 10, we have cable overhead extensions. Now you might think, okay, compound movements. Well, it's hard to hit the long head, something I'm known for. I'm a bit of a long head connoisseur, with compound movements. Bench press, overhead press, it's just not going to be working that much long head. It's certainly not getting a stretch on the long head. And so I find that isolating this area is very useful. Plus, you're also working the other heads of the triceps as well, okay? So it's not like it's truly isolating the long head, you're working other areas too. Now, something like a push down is also working the long head. It might not be quite as emphasized. I find that doing overhead work just works better for me. Number 9, we have incline dumbbell curls. While natural hypertrophy is not a fan of this movement, I certainly am.
But it's important to remember one thing. You're wrong. Here's why.
They are progressible, they are stable, they allow you to cheat slightly, but not so much like an easy bar curl or a barbell curl. They are joint friendly because you have full rotation because you're using dumbbells. Something like a straight barbell curl, for a lot of people, it just chews up their elbows, especially as they get bigger, and it's sort of harder to maintain that wrist position throughout the full range of motion. And it has become by far my favorite biceps movement. Sometimes I'll do it on about a 45-degree incline. Sometimes I will go a little bit higher. They're just variations. They're just ways to slightly change the range of motion and the strength curve. Both great options. Try them both out and see which one you prefer. Other good options would be hammer curls or reverse grip curls, but I settled on incline curls just because there's a little bit better of a stretch and I can go a little bit heavier. Alright, number 8, another isolation movement. I can already hear people freaking out in the comments.
This is blasphemy. This is madness.
Lu lateral raises. Now, first of all, I enjoy these, and enjoyment is very important when you can only do a few movements. You better enjoy them or you're not going to do them. A great range of motion, gets a lot of traps, upper traps, mid traps, lower traps, scapular upward rotation involved. I find it is very good for shoulder health. I have some shoulder imbalances, and so, getting that huge sweeping range of motion, you're working your front delt, you are working your side delt, okay? Anyone who says your side delt is not working on these probably hasn't done them. And they're just a great overall movement. Now, you could also do something like a face pull. I think if you are prone to shoulder injuries, a face pull might be a better option just because you're working your rotator cuff as well. And then you could also, of course, do normal lateral raises. An upright row is also a good variation. That was actually Bald Omni-Man's selection for the delts. All are good options. I just prefer the Lu lateral raise. Number 7 is going to be the seated dumbbell press. Now, I've done a wide variety of pressing movements.
Impressive. Most impressive.
With barbells, with machines, with dumbbells, Arnold presses. and I think this is going to be my number one pick overall. A close second would be a seated barbell press. Also a good option. For me, my strength is pretty similar on both of these, but again, just having dumbbells and being allowed to rotate and having freedom of movement is very, very valuable, especially when you can't really swap the movement out. I'm sure some people in their top 10 would not have any presses at all, but I think being strong in every plane of movement is valuable.
Motherfucking plane!
So your rows, your pulls, your pushes, but also your presses. And being at least competent overhead, it's not just a good shoulder movement, a good shoulder builder, but it is good for shoulder health. Number 6, we have a Helms row. So this is effectively a row where you are hinging the hips back and then you are lightly supporting your chest on an incline bench. Now, some people say that this hurts their chest. You can put a pad on the bench, but I think in a lot of cases this is because someone's feet are too far back. They're not hinging their hips back, and they're just like dive bombing their chest onto the bench. You don't want to be putting a ton of weight on the bench. I find that this is good for lats if you do them rowing towards the hips, but you can also work a lot of rear delt or upper back if you are rowing a little bit higher. Fantastic movement all around. You can go beyond failure, takes the lower back pretty much out of it. Excellent movement all around. If you switch gyms, you can compare that very easily. You don't have to be like, well, this machine I was 3 plates and this machine 4.5 plates felt about similar. No. With dumbbells, what you row is what you know. And so don't get me wrong, I like hammer rows, I like machine rows, I like chest-supported rows, I like chest-supported T-bar rows. All of those are great options, but I think in this case, sticking to the basics is just a good overall idea. Number 5, we have one of my most hated exercises of all time, the Bulgarian split squat. Now, I know I said, oh, you should enjoy your exercises. I love them, but I also hate them, right? But they provide so many unique benefits that other exercises just don't, that I think they are worth including in pretty much every training program. How you doing? A lot of people have tight hip flexors. It fixes that. They have tight glutes. It fixes that. Balance, stability, mobility, athleticism, obviously gains as well for the glutes and the quads and the adductors. Just a great bang for your buck all around movement. Yes, they are fucking difficult. Yes, they are miserable, especially if you're training truly close to failure. But man, they are worth it. Plus, you're getting a little bit of grip work and trap work, and it's nice to have a movement where the lower back is not superly heavily loaded as well. Now, you can easily swap these for walking lunges or reverse lunges. I think those are both great options as well. Especially lunges, you're getting like a stretch on the traps. You're getting this sort of swinging movement with every single step that works the rear delt surprisingly well as well. Yeah, let's go with that. Next up, number 4, we have neutral grip pull-ups. Now, neutral grip is generally the most joint-friendly of the grips. Overhand can be a little bit tough on the shoulders, especially if you go very, very wide. Underhand, I can't even really do those anymore just because I don't have the mobility. Can be tough on the wrists, can be tough on the elbows, not so tough on the shoulders. But I find that neutral grip, especially fairly narrow, just feels the best. Now, you can also pick ring pull-ups, and I think those are a great option. But if I pick that, I have to do them with rings, which means I have to bring my rings every time I want to do an upper body workout. No, thank you. Now, you could easily pick a pull down, and I think that's a fine variation. But if I could only pick one, I'm going pull-ups all the way. I think the extra abdominal involvement and the extra athleticism required is a no-brainer. Yes, it is more comfortable to sit down, but I think a lot of people doing pull-downs and not doing pull-ups are cheating themselves just because they want that extra comfort. Now, you can do overhand pull-ups as well if you really, really want, but because I already have a row in the program, I would rather have a variation that is a lot more lat-focused, particularly as it is a weakness. Number 3, we're getting up there, would have to be a zombie front squat. Now, this movement does a lot. It's going to be my main quad movement. It is going to be responsible for a lot of breathing and bracing. It's also quite a bit of upper back. The zombie position means that I don't have to worry about, getting into the right position. I can just put on the front delt and then stand back up. Now, I do think high bar, Platz style squats are a very, very good option here, and I was kind of torn between the two. This is probably going to be one that I would go back and forth depending on the training cycle. For now, I think the zombie squats would take it, but they are pretty similar movements overall, and you're going to want to go by personal preference, try both out, and see which one you prefer. I also think that Smith machine hack squats are a close contender here. If it was just quad hypertrophy considered, I think I would go for the Smith machine hack squats, but zombie squats are also working the upper back, and they are more spammable. They're a little bit easier on the knees as well. And so I think they take number 3. Number 2, the close grip bench press. Now, I've been doing these for a very, very long time. They feel very comfortable, very natural, with a wider grip due to the aforementioned shoulder imbalances. Even unracking the bar does not feel great, but with a closer grip, it's easy on the elbows, it's easy on the wrist, it's easier on the shoulders, and I can do it a lot more frequently. And I think spamming these is better than doing the barbell bench press with a wider grip, not feeling great, and then having to replace it. Oh, but you can't replace it because you can only do 10 exercises. I thought about putting in dips, but I think if I have to spam it and I want to be doing it 2, 3, maybe even 4 times per week, close grip bench press is a better overall pick, at least for me. I also thought about doing incline dumbbell bench press, but because I already have a seated dumbbell press, those are similar enough that I don't think they're worth including, right? If you're already doing this with the same implement, probably not worth it. I also did think about including a Larson press, but for me, a normal close grip bench press with my feet on the ground and a Larson press are basically the same thing. I don't use a ton of leg drive, I don't use a big arch, and so, the first time I did a Larson press, I was hitting the exact same number. So for me, it's kind of the same thing. All right, for the number 1 pick, smart people will know that it's gotta be a hinge.
What the hell are you doing?
I have squats in here, pushes, presses, rows, curls, extensions, a shoulder isolation. The number 1 exercise that I would have to pick would be a Romanian deadlift. This exercise is doing so much, it's working so many different muscle groups. Hamstrings, adductors, glutes, spinal erectors, lats, traps, your grip. This, in my opinion, is a no-brainer. Now, there are other hinges that you could do. You could pick a sumo deadlift, you could pick a conventional deadlift, snatch grip deadlift, deficit deadlift, etc. You could do good mornings, you could do back extensions. I think those all have advantages, but it's got to be the RDL, man. Just having an eccentric is really, really important if you are interested in hypertrophy. And it's not like those other exercises don't build muscle. They absolutely do. But having something like an RDL where you are focused on hinging, where you can really feel your hips going back and forth, and that sounds... Now, you could argue for something like a back extension from a rehab or prehab standpoint, especially for lower back health. It is nice to get everything opened up. You're supporting the hips. You're getting more of a decompressioning type of effect. But back extensions do not replace RDLs. That's something I've learned this year. I was injured. I couldn't do RDLs most of the year. And my physique suffered. My spinal erectors definitely decreased in overall size and thickness. And I have actually found that RDLs are one of my better trap movements. They're one of my better lat movements. I've gotten sore lats from doing RDLs, and I think they're just such a good movement. And I would say most people who have been lifting a while, if they're choosing a top 10, RDLs are probably going to find their way in there somewhere. Now, for OGs on the channel, I did record a very, very similar video to this almost exactly 2 years ago, where I detailed my top 60 movements. Now, you might actually see that there are some changes. I've updated my opinion. And so sometimes I'll get a message from someone saying, you said this here and this here. These are not exactly the same. If you have exactly the same opinions on training and exercise selection 2 years ago as you do now, that's a problem. You want to keep learning. You want to be updating your opinion at all times. And there's still a lot of overlap between that list and my current list, but it's not a 100% overlap. If it was, that would probably be a problem. So my old top 10 was barbell sumo deadlift, incline dumbbell bench press, weighted neutral pull-ups, barbell back squats, barbell rows, barbell presses, barbell curls, overhead cable extensions, deficit deadlifts, and Bulgarian split squats. So as you can see, I've kind of gotten away from barbell movements just a little bit. I still include some, but I have sort of diversified my opinions and moved a little bit more towards dumbbells overall. As your training age increases, you are probably going to want to diversify your training. And so even 10 exercises is not going to be enough. You're going to want 20 or maybe even 30 to pick from. Anyway, let me know your top 10. Are there any similarities to my list or any differences? I hope they are. Don't just copy me. This is just my opinion, my list. I'm just some guy on the internet. For more about proper exercise selection and programming them all into an effective hypertrophy training plan, you can check out my books available on my website, verityfit.com. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you in the next video. Peace.